are you?
Good, I am bloody fantastic.
Fantastic. It's been about 2.5 years since we last collaborated together. And during this lockdown, I was really hoping to sort of reach out and speak to a few more vloggers, people that do similar things to us. And with us knowing each other, I thought you were the perfect person to sit down with and have a debate with over this time. So it became clear to me that we're both very much into landscape photography. But one thing is you love to travel the world, and I personally love to stay in Scotland. So I thought we'd sit down today and basically debate that and see why we both have these different ways of doing our photography and sort of the pros and cons to each way. So first of all, what actually inspired you to get into landscape photography in the first place?
Yeah, good question, Kim. First of all, 2.5 years too long. We need to collaborate again in the near future. I'm going to head back to Scotland, or possibly after this debate, you could be heading somewhere around the world to collaborate with me. Who knows? But why did I get into travel photography? It started off when I was really young, Taka. I was probably 12, 13, maybe even younger than that. My parents always loved this sense of adventure. So my dad and mum, and I'm pretty sure my dad was quite young, loved to travel around Australia. And when we were growing up, it was sort of that adventure style of traveling and camping, and as we do in Australia. And when I was sort of getting old enough to sort of ride my bike, do this like one night expedition, let's say, camping in the wilderness in Australia, I come home and sort of spoke to my parents, my friends at school, and they were just, yeah, cool. They never really appreciated the stories because I had never something to witness of what I was talking about. So I think it was my 12th or 13th birthday, my mum bought me a camera. I was super pumped. It was always on me, in my pocket, around my neck, wherever I went, I had a camera. And I love this sense of storytelling. And when I could drive at 16 and a half, every weekend from school, it was like, do my homework, get out, camp, photograph. And for me, actually, it wasn't so much about the photography aspect. It was more the storytelling, to basically share this experience with my family, my friends. And when I got on to sort of, traveling the world, as I am basically full-time now, it turned to video to really start expressing that to my family and friends once again. So yeah, for me, it's actually like not so much about the photography, it's about the storytelling aspect and memories. I think memories is I'm a male, I forget things really easily and I want to remember that. So photography and videography, I love this aspect of capturing moments and sharing them with friends and family, basically, Kim. So
Yeah, so it's fantastic actually, because we kind of got into it for the same reasons. Like I was about 16 when I got my first camera, and
yeah,
I really got it because I used to go out and watch the sunset every evening on the beach
yeah,
in the village I grew up in, and I wanted to take photographs of that to sort of share with others, and as you say, for memories.
yeah,
So we've both sort of started this for pretty much the same reasons in many ways, to tell a story, to
yeah,
share it. Um,
organically too, yeah.
yeah, fantastic. So it sort of leads me on to this idea of what made you decide that you wanted to travel the world to do photography and not just stay in Australia itself?
Yeah, I come from a very travelling family. My mum was actually born in Scotland, so I'm half Scottish. I don't act it, I'm not anything like it or anything like that, but my mum, when she was quite younger, she travelled a lot for herself, for work, and my uncle travelled a lot in his later part of his life. So, and my auntie now, she's travelled for 20 something years of her life. So, it's in my blood almost to travel and experience these new things. And I like to say that I knew this when I was younger, that I wanted to travel. But I've always, as we all do with our love and passion, we have this deep down feeling of vulnerability, the unknown. So I wanted to, and the older I got, realised that, money is quite valuable. And once I took that leap, it was sort of a huge weight off my shoulders. I knew exactly at that moment when I left, sitting in the airport by myself right now and seeing my mum and dad, crying, and I was a bit emotional. But once that all went away, it was sort of like I knew that the last 10, almost 15 years of my life when I was young, that this is what I was waiting for. Like, this was the moment I wanted to just pack my bags, live out of my bags, and keep going. I love being vulnerable. I love being in situations where I'm very uncomfortable. I think this, for me, is who we find out who we truly are. I grew up a lot very quickly. I had to grow up a lot very quickly. So I don't know, I like to tell people that I traveled the world for photography, but this is 100% not true. This is something just come along on my journey. It was like I had my suitcase and I had my camera. It was part of me. But I wanted to develop, I wanted to grow as a person. So yeah, I love being vulnerable. I love new experiences. But I think the older I get, the more I appreciate in travel the little things. You know, my camera's behind me. I love them. They are, like I said, part of who I am. Almost my third leg as I walk around. But they capture memories and moments of why I travel, being vulnerable. And yeah, I love this sense of new experiences. And, you know, something that I always cherish when I travel, especially to like places that are very poor, is, you know, what I have as a possession and what I experience in my life. Some people can never even experience this to look at. You know, I have a camera. Some people couldn't even look at a camera or pay for it, never mind. And, you know, having a camera, having little in my life makes me appreciate the small things in life. Or, you know, the crap that we worry about every day at work means nothing to these people. So I love this feeling about travel and what it does for me. And getting back onto the photography side of things, I want to capture those moments to always remember that little things mean in our life, basically. So yeah, like that's sort of the underlying true factor.
That's very humbling, actually, to hear you say that. And, you know, it takes some guts to say, you know, that you like to be in these vulnerable situations. Because I personally would love to go to other countries, but not necessarily for photography, more for the experience. But I would really struggle to do that on my own. I would have to be travelling with somebody or going to some sort of travel holiday where I knew I was going to meet a group of people. So, I mean, it takes a lot of guts to do what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, you say about the whole appreciating the small things in life. I mean, I guess that's one of the reasons why I personally love photographing in Scotland so much. I find so much passion and wonder for this country and so much variety. And I like to appreciate, I guess, what's on my doorstep in many ways. And it's quite interesting to see that I think you and me both have pretty much the same outlook on life, but we just go about it a slightly different way.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
You want to find yourself out there travelling the world, whereas I want to find myself by going around Scotland and enjoying my home country and everything that it has to offer. And I suppose one thing that puts me off in many ways about the travelling side of photography is, I don't know, the sort of carbon footprint side of it, you know, the amount of flying you maybe do. Is that something that you're conscious about at all when you're travelling around?
This is a question that I get asked that I thought I never would get asked. And, you know, I was young once, I was stupid. We all do stupid things when we were younger, and I didn't understand this when I was younger. I left home about 20, 21 years of age. I don't know, like I can't say for facts. I don't have facts in front of me or anything like that, but I think I would have at least carbon footprint compared to most people in bigger cities. And the reason I say that is because when I travel, I am very cautious, not so much the carbon footprint. I will be honest with you, I don't think about that on the forefront of my mind. But what I do think of is how I can incorporate my, you know, I'm stepping into someone else's world. I look at it in the ocean, I grew up around the ocean, and people say I hate sharks, but we're stepping into their world. So how can we be more like them? And the reason I say that is when I go into these places, I want to become a local, not a tourist. I want to become part of their lifestyle and understand how they work. So getting back onto the carbon footprint, I basically fly there and I go by a couple of golden rules. I don't fly internally. This is something I don't want to do. I don't want to fly internally for the two reasons, basically. I don't want to waste the time traveling in an airport. This for me is a huge waste of time. But secondly, I want to experience what the locals would experience. And if it takes me 10 hours on an overnight bus, this for me is part of the experience and how they would do it. They couldn't afford to fly internally. So to answer your question very simply, I don't think of it on the forefront of my mind, but there are ways that you can do better for the carbon footprint. You know, travel internally on public transport, don't like get a cab, fly internally. And yeah, that's basically the best thing. And for me, I know it's hard because everyone doesn't have much time, but the best way to improve the carbon footprint is travel for longer periods. So, you know, if you can go for 2 or 3 weeks rather than 4 days here, 4 days there, this is much better than traveling, you know, for a longer period. And I always say, travel less when you're in the country and experience more, like do more once you're there.
That's a really, really good way of looking at it, actually. I'd never really thought about the whole difference between internal and external flights. I actually love the fact that you'll fly to a country but then use the public transport to fully experience it. That's a really good way of doing it, actually, because I think in terms of your passion for travel photography, you need to fly to get to other countries, but the fact that you're really conscious sort of what you're doing when you're there to sort of make the most of your experience and your time there and reduce your carbon footprint in many ways is fantastic. I really, really like that outlook. That's really good.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there's a lot of pressure in travel photography? Because you invest a lot of money, time, and resources to get to a country, and then when you get there, if you're not greeted with those conditions that you hoped you would have for photography, do you feel disappointed with that and feel that pressure?
Oh, great question. We could sit here for 3 or 4 days answering this question. Simple answer, yes, 100% yes. It's, getting back into that vulnerability of things, it's the same in photography. You're putting yourself into elements that you have no idea about, basically. But yeah, I can basically break it down to 3 main aspects. So everyone says, money can't buy happiness, but for me, I spend my money to travel. It makes me extremely happy. So that's sort of the simple answer. Yes, I'm vulnerable. Yes, it's expensive, but some people buy nice cars. I travel because it makes me happy, basically. So yeah, I see money as an object that, it's made me travel for the last 10 years. It's traveled to over 100 countries, and I'm extremely, extremely lucky about this aspect. But getting onto the photography aspect of it, I think the sense that I love about travel photography is you have to deal with what you're given. And, getting back onto the carbon footprint, you can be shoved on a bus for 10 hours next to 100 people and be extremely uncomfortable, but capturing those moments are something you can't plan for. You have no idea what's going to happen from point A to point B. And this, for me, is a really good sense of adventure and excitement in photography, because you can capture those moments, you can relive those moments. And I always say in photography, you can't sort of put forward in a photo expression of how you felt, the smells and that sort of stuff. Now that sounds really weird, but that's part of travel photography. And yeah, another thing that I love about travel photography, and I really want to express to people about travel photography, is you never understand what you're good at until you put yourself in a position that you've never experienced. And I get a lot of emails probably every week. Should I upgrade my camera? Should I get a new lens? What tripod do you have? The best camera you've got is the one that you've got already, and that's simple as that as a travel photographer. And I've always said to myself, you can be amazing at being a landscape photographer, and a lot of people say to me, your landscape images are beautiful, and I'm really humble and appreciative for that, but landscape's actually probably not my number one go-to. It's sort of what makes me money, I guess, and what sort of puts my work out there. But my passion and desire is travel photography, but this is me personally. And I always say to people, once you put yourself out there and you can use your camera in all elements, travel photography on buses, on planes, photographing thunderstorms, street photography, then you should upgrade your camera, or then you should upgrade your lens. So, I could talk about this for days, Kim, and it's a whole new element outside of travel photography and what you can do inside of this. So, but probably the biggest one I get asked is time to go and travel, to go and do this. And I understand, money's a big issue, family's a big issue, but time, if you have 1 day, you can go and do something with this 1 day. If you have 10 days, you can go and do something with this day. So, I always say, make time. If you want to do something, you'll make time to do it. So that's the biggest thing. But yeah, it's a really hard question for me to answer. I've had 10 years experience doing this and everything, but yeah, it's hard.
Is there an experience that you've had while you've been traveling that's like really scared or shocked you? Given that for some people it's quite a big thing to do, travel around the world doing photography. Like, have you had any experiences that you've really struggled with?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, like, the hardest thing is a new culture. Like, when you're young, inexperienced, especially if you're nervous, like right now, I could probably throw myself into any culture, any experience, and adapt quite quickly. I've gone from everywhere from camping in the middle of Central Asia where no one speaks English to eating food that I have no idea what I'm eating. But to be fair, these countries actually are the most welcoming. Probably the most dangerous experience I've had are probably in the countries that my mum and dad travelled to for resort places, Portugal, Greece, these places. Can't really say it because my mum and dad are probably going to watch this. I've never told them these stories, but, being sort of approached with knives and that sort of stuff because you're carrying expensive camera gear. And this is what I find very funny because people get so nervous about this. But, this happened to me, like I said, in the middle of Paris. And everyone's been to Paris. Everyone does this. Everyone experiences Paris and everything. So where Central Asia and, Africa, these countries, I've had probably 99% amazing experiences and they can't understand why you're there. So it's a funny one, I guess. What we think in our brain and what, especially as a Westerner, what the news tells us is sometimes quite backwards, actually. And this is a huge aspect why I love not just photography travel, but just travel.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think you can ever properly know how it's going to affect you or how you're going to, what experiences you're going to have until you actually go out there and do it. It's really, really interesting in many ways, but like flipping that on its head, where would you say is the best place you've ever visited or done photography?
Digging through the archives, probably for me personally, I would have to say the overall experience would be the western part of America. So I'm getting away from the travel aspect for me personally. I'm just concentrating on the photography. There is no place before I say this, if you think there's somewhere different, let me and Kim know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to think. But for me, there is no place on earth that is so diverse on the western coast of America. And when I'm talking the western coast of America, I'm traveling inland from Utah as well. The Big Five, the Grand Canyon, Arches National Park, Zion, all the way up to Oregon, Washington. There's not one aspect of photography that you couldn't photograph there. And I'm talking everything outside landscape photography. You can, photograph architecture, you can photograph cityscape, portrait photography in the old parts of San Francisco. The list is endless, absolutely endless. And, as a moral, what I love to do, camper vanning, camping, travel, road trips, photography, it just fits my overall brand. I could happily spend the next 2 years traveling and still see maybe 5% of this. It's incredible, absolutely incredible.
Wow, it must have been amazing to be somewhere with so much diversity and, especially from a photography point of view where you can try all these different genres and different things. Like every day must have been different out there.
Yeah, and this is my sort of, to have this sort of debate, this counteract argument of with people, not just yourself, Kim, but with people out there, if you're sitting there thinking, if you want to travel or you do travel currently and you think, you don't go on dedicated photography trips, sometimes this can be hard to comprehend. But I don't know, just throwing yourself in different elements and different climates. You can go to Scotland 100 times and photograph the same place and you can work on this composition, this photo. But when you throw yourself into different situations, there's just something about that. I don't know what it is, how to replicate this through words, but when you can photograph Milky Ways at night, in the morning photograph cityscapes and photograph deserts and endless plains in the afternoon, this for me is sort of photography at its ultimate. And I don't know, you just can't get this at home. You can't, even from my home, your home, everyone's home, you are so used to photographing what you're comfortable. And this is fine. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I don't know. I think the only way you can experience this is to truly do it. And I know it sounds cliche, but it sort of is.
No, I totally get that. I think for me it's funny because I've always holidayed and stayed in Scotland my whole life. And even the fact that I've, travelled around the majority of Scotland, there's still so many islands here and sort of the south part of Scotland that I've never explored. And every year still, I'm still going out and discovering new places that I've never been to before. And I think that's why I find Scotland so fascinating and why I spend so much time photographing here and don't have that same maybe drive and determination to travel, is because no matter how long I've lived in this country, every year I'm still discovering new places and photographing new things. And for such a small country, that really, really fascinates me. I think I'd find it quite overwhelming to be travelling the world and seeing all these incredible landscapes. And I think I'd always come away thinking or feeling like I never got to experience it all. But and I know you can't experience it all in any holiday or trip you go on. I think that's just always what it's been for me about Scotland, is I want to see my whole home country and experience it all. I don't know why, but yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that's a very good way to look at it. I come from one of the biggest countries in the world. Like, it's absolutely massive, Australia. It's also very diverse. But my sort of counteract question to you is, I totally respect that. I've been in Slovenia for now 2 years, and I can really find this addiction to go back to the same places and almost master a photo. And that's something about travel photography that can become quite frustrating. Get back to your point where, the overwhelming desire to capture these photos. But, my question back to you with that, Kim, is, do you find your photography become stagnant? You're photographing similar things over and over again. You're photographing similar weather patterns. This is something that changes in travel photography, same storms, same weather, same, foreground interest. Do you find it, I don't know, quite stagnant, I don't want to say boring, because nothing's boring, but yeah, this repetition?
I guess it can in some ways, but one thing I've always thought or found is that, to me, Scotland, I find, is like 100 countries rolled into one. You've got amazing countryside, then you've got the rugged mountains. Every coastline in Scotland is completely different. The west coast is completely different to the east coast. The islands all have their own sort of traditions and their own quirks about them. You've got the beautiful lochs and that in different places as well. So although it's a small country, and although I do go back to the same locations time and time again, I still find every time I go out there's something new, and you've got that variety of the mountains or the countryside or I find some countries are well known for one thing, and you could say that Scotland's well known for the Highlands, but I like to go often as well as to the Highlands. I like to go to the other less well known parts of Scotland, which have so many hidden gems, from spectacular beaches people don't know about to amazing cliff faces. And I think for me, the thing that really inspires me in photography is water, and especially the coastline.
Yeah.
And I think the diversity of the coastline in Scotland, because the majority of Scotland is, obviously surrounded by water.
Yeah.
I just find there's so much variety here. But I totally get the travel aspect, and I think if I had more confidence, more time, more money, I would love to do travelling. But I don't know, I just find I want to maybe become like an expert in my home country and also just experience it all, because I find so many people live in a beautiful country, no matter where it is in the world. There's so many beautiful countries, and people don't actually take the time to explore their home country. They just spend every holiday they have, they're travelling, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's great to see the world. But I don't know, I've always had this desire to really get to know my home country and appreciate it, because it doesn't matter how much money or time you have, you'll always have your home comforts, your home area, and being able to appreciate that and find wonder in it without wanting to keep travelling and seeing places. I don't know, I find that quite comforting in many ways.
And don't, everyone's getting older every day, and like I said to you before, the more I stay in Slovenia, the more I find, if you're a perfectionist, I find myself a little bit of a perfectionist. Travel photography is not for you. I can guarantee that right now, because you'll leave a country, you'll leave a destination wanting more. And I always have this, especially going through places like Africa, where it's so diverse, so big. Like, we are talking, it's taken you 14, 15 hours to capture a photo. To drive somewhere to capture a photo. And for me, being a perfectionist, I get there and I know what I want to capture. And this is sometimes the hardest thing about travel photography aspect. You know what you want to capture, but you just haven't got time. And that's sort of like, I've sort of thought about this going into it, I've dedicated a lot of my life, basically 1/3 of my life, to full-time travel. So I understand that I am probably 5% of the people in the world that dedicate my life to full-time travel. And if you do have a normal 9 to 5 job and 4 weeks holiday per year, if you're lucky enough to have that, this is how I personally feel. Dedicating one of those weeks to, if you love photography, dedicating 1 week to go and pursue somewhere different. If you're in Scotland like Kim is, I wouldn't recommend to go to, an upgrade might be New Zealand. New Zealand and Scotland for me are basically the brothers from Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere. Absolutely incredible. But you're still going to find different things and, different mountains, different culture, even foods. You can photograph foods. It's part of the experience of travel photography. When you're photographing your home country, food is food. People are people. The bus is the bus. Everything's the same for you. And I don't know, I just feel like for me, I've gained so much knowledge by failing in good ways. Putting myself in elements of photography where I want to capture a mountain, I haven't captured it properly, got into post-production. And now I'm in Slovenia. I've learned from those mistakes in Central Asia, and I've learned and developed in my photography. And I find that I've spent 12 months in Slovenia now without traveling, and it's driving me bonkers. It is driving me bonkers, and especially with this situation we're in right now, I find it even harder. So I totally respect and understand that you want to become the jack of all trade and the master of Scotland. Sorry, yeah, I could never do it, Kim. I'll be honest with you, I could never do it. Yeah.
It's good though, because it shows that, like I say at the start, although we have the same sort of principles and outlook of photography, we have these different passions and these different desires. But then actually speaking to you today is making me want to travel. I think it's just a case of having that confidence and that time and that, I don't know, just the time and money to commit to that.
And I suppose maybe if you are someone like Kim watching this, and you're someone like me on the other side that doesn't care, is happy to pack his bag tomorrow and go anywhere in the world, I guess team up. I've always said that the day that Kim and I met, it was never that awkward. Hello, I'm Kim. How are you? It was comfortable. We are very similar people, just living very different lives. Find that person, buddy up with them, go. Put yourself in elements, put yourself, trust in that person, and just go. And that would be sort of my thing to you, Kim. If you ever want to go on a holiday and photograph, ring me up. I'll be out there to help you out. And because even for me, I've met a lot of photographers, a lot of normal people traveling, and I know this is a photography thing we're doing right now, but there's so much to learn from people that are so different to you. We can't love everyone in the world, but the person that you most find different when traveling is the person you'll remember for a long time, because they've taught you something that you never thought you'd learn. And yeah, it's funny. Travel photography is a funny thing. It's really rewarding, but also can be very... I find the best part about travel photography or traveling is the moment you come home. And that might sound crazy because you've just had all these experiences, but you really sit down and you work out what's important in your life, what's not important, and growing as that person when you travel. So I understand travel is not for everyone. That's totally cool. I'm sure if I was born in Scotland, Kim, I'd be traveling all around that beautiful place. So it's
Well, my final question is going to be very hard for you, because on the back of that, I was going to say to you, if you had to settle in one country and you were only allowed to photograph that country for the rest of your life...
Kim, what are you doing?
What country would it be?
Right, so this podcast is currently over. No. Very good question. Very hard to answer. So I'm going to answer it in two different ways. Personally, as Matthew Storer, and secondly, as Matthew Storer Photography, as a business. As a business, I'd probably have to say where I am currently, Slovenia. I remember when I first met Kim, and she was blown away that I was traveling all this time. And, she had all the standard questions. How much does it cost you? How do you do it? How do you find the passion, the drive? I told her then I would never settle in Europe. And here I am. I've settled in Europe. I've got very good friends, girlfriend now in Slovenia, her family. I feel very comfortable, and it's one of the most beautiful places in the world to live because, I've got the Dolomites 4-hour drive away. I've got Slovenia, one of the most beautiful countries in Europe. And if you haven't been to Slovenia, sorry, you're missing out. I've got the Croatian coast about 3 hours away. So as a business standpoint, this is crazy. It is so beautiful. Personally, I grew up in a very, very small town in Australia. So I don't deal well with a lot of people all the time. So personally, I would love to hope deep down to go back to Australia one day and live, but I know business-wise it's not the best move for me, being that travel landscape photographer. So personally, I think I've still got quite a bit to do in my life travel-wise before I could fully answer that. I think I'm almost 30 now, and yeah, that's a seriously hard question to answer. I love Slovenia. I think it's one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Right now, I could easily say I could see myself spending the rest of my life living here. So we'll just end it on that note. It's not the best answer, but I don't know. It's a hard one. Very hard one.
Well, you've been to Scotland and experienced my home country. So if you're still in Slovenia after this, I think I should try and find the confidence to come over and experience a new country. And at least then I'd have you with me as a guide for, I don't know.
And even saying that, like I said before, if you are watching this and you are afraid of, I know that Kim and I's thing is all about travel. If you're interested in traveling to Scotland, message Kim. She's a beautiful human being. She's going to help you outside of photography. And it's the same with me. If you want to travel somewhere, if you've watched one of my YouTube channels and want to travel somewhere, just ask us. We're going to help you. Like, this is our passion. We love this. Yeah, and I don't know, for me, there'd be no greater feeling, to have Kim over here and experience new things with you, like whether it's photography, whether, even things like, I always say your taste buds, your smells in photography, you can't replicate this, but as a human traveling, you can, and, try different foods. The food over here is beautiful, Kim. You might put on a few pounds when you come back to Scotland, but that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Oh, you're really making me want to come. Do you know, I actually think we should try and make this happen next year when everything's over. I should just get out of my comfort zone, come to Slovenia for 5-6 days and experience it.
Yeah, do it. It's beautiful. I would love to make that happen.
That'd be awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming and speaking to me today, Matt. I really, really appreciate it. It's been so good to chat with you again and sort of reunite over the internet, and hopefully in the near future we can reunite face to face as well.
I'd love that. Absolutely love that.
Fantastic. Well, you take care of the rest of this lockdown period, and if you're interested, Matt has also done a podcast with me where we discuss the sort of ups and downs of YouTube and the mental health aspect of YouTube, and if you'd like to watch that, head over to Matt's channel now where it will be live. So yeah, thank you, Matt.
No problem.
And I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Kim.
Bye.
Bye.